We look at different technologies that go into the cockpit.
No doubt, for a long time now, the FAA has become a bone in the ass of SpaceX, with many disappointments, setbacks, and hindrances against launching the Starship into space. Right now, SpaceX is tired. They can't take it anymore. The company has to devise a plan B to kick the FAA out of the picture. What is the new way Elon has discovered to carry out an operation in Boca Chica, Texas without obeying the FAA's regulations? Join us as we dig out SpaceX's new moves to cancel out the FAA from the mission of launching the Starship on Mars. Amidst several nightmares faced by SpaceX to successfully send the Starship into space, on the Moon and then on Mars, the FAA played an 80% role in delaying the mission, which was not a good one for SpaceX to take. Though the FAA was not on the wrong side, they wanted SpaceX to sign an undertaking that the natural bodies, trees, animals, sea tortoises, or aquatic animals would be saved. At the same time, SpaceX carries out its launch duties. However, the orbital Starship flights departing from Texas would require the launch of a giant rocket than the Saturn V that carried humans to the Moon. Before SpaceX could obtain the final FAA license to launch its mega rocket, the company would have to demonstrate that it complies with a total of 75 new provisions, such as preparing a historical context report of the Mexican War. The document only covers 10 launches every year, 5 of which are suborbital and 5 of which are orbital. A limit that is too slim for the company to see its mission of journeying to Mars feasible, and SpaceX will surely break a policy like this when the orbital flight becomes interesting at all corners of the world. Even though we could say that the FAA has a good intention for the public, at the same time they were able to frustrate a mysterious Starship project inspired by Elon Musk to change the game of human domination in the universe. So SpaceX has to look for a viable way to play around with things and get the FAA out of the way to make Elon's dream of landing the Starship on Mars and colonizing it a thing that will come to pass in reality. All over the world, we will realize that we have Earth 2.0 we can travel to and survive apart from the Earth. Many SpaceX fans on Twitter and Reddit have suggested that Elon Musk and SpaceX sue the FAA in court for the unnecessary delay and restriction of a company's right to US development, but Elon Musk doesn't seem to buy the idea. Instead, his plan B is to forget about the FAA and how they try to frustrate all activities in Boca Chica, Texas, then face Florida. After all, the FAA cannot be a demigod SpaceX will continue to worship forever. So, after all these years of waiting, SpaceX finally gives up on the FAA, their permits, or whatever regulations they feel the company should adhere to and move on. Remember that Elon Musk enjoys a free world where fewer rules or policies are laid out or forced on people. He wants people to live a free lifestyle while being cautious about the rights and wrongs. This is why he once said on Twitter that he wants to create a world on Mars where there will be no government policies, police, soldiers, and government enforcement agencies. Everyone will live freely, and that is Elon's personality for you. Musk has stated that SpaceX intends to eventually relocate its Starship operations to the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. The company is already building a new launch tower and possesses all necessary permissions for orbital launches. The location in South Texas may continue to serve as a center for research and development. Nevertheless, it's vital to keep in mind that if the Starship project is successful, there will be less of a need for an active test program at Boca Chica Beach. In April of 2021, a major change occurred when NASA granted SpaceX a contract of $2.89 billion to create a version of the Starship that could be used as the lunar landing vehicle during the first crew return to the Moon as part of the Artemis program. The astronauts will be flown to lunar orbit by a Space Launch System rocket and an Orion capsule operated by NASA. Once there, they will board a Starship waiting to take them to the Moon's surface. This part of NASA's moonshot drove Starship operations towards the Kennedy Space Center has been the home of NASA's human spaceflight operations since the agency started working. During the process of FAA certification, there has been an increase in activity at Boca Chica Beach. At the crossroads, the conclusion of the construction of the SpaceX orbital launch tower in Florida draws even closer. The sixth segment of the orbital launch tower located at LC-39A was rolled out before being lifted atop the part that came before it. Meanwhile, Segment 7 is being prepared for its own role, and Segment 8 is still in preparation for the same operation. This takes place as construction has begun on the 9th segment. This section will hold the pulleys and mechanisms necessary for the chopsticks, and it is the final section required before a cap segment would go on top of the structure. Furthermore, to the other work that is being done at the Cape, the assembly of the chopsticks is still going on at the Roberts Road Megabay. Concrete foundations have been laid and tents are gradually being built up that are similar to the ones in Texas, which are used for the construction of starships. In addition, the company is working with NASA to expand its operations at the Kennedy Space Center. The expansion will involve increasing the company's footprint by up to 100 acres to develop an office of facilities that will handle the processing of vehicles and payloads. These facilities will include fabrication, storage, manufacturing, shipping and receiving. Likewise, SpaceX intends to build a roughly 1.6-mile long connector road from the NASA Parkway to the Roberts Road facility. This road will connect the two roads, making room for work on Starship, SpaceX's reusable two-stage rocket, which is capable of sending more than 100 metric tons into orbit, is one of the primary reasons for this expansion's preferences. As for the launch pad in Florida, SpaceX may want to conduct launches offshore in the Gulf of Mexico in the state of Mississippi's port of Pascagoula. Two oil rigs owned by SpaceX and named Phobos and Deimos are converted into Starship launch platforms. These platforms have the potential to serve as the location for the hazardous launch test that the Kennedy Space Center is unable to support. Uncrewed tanker ships will certainly be launched by Elon from platforms in the Gulf of Mexico, about 100 kilometers from the Boca Chica beach. With those platforms, we will have total control over the Starship launch schedule and exclusive tracking rights over the entire Gulf of Mexico, something he lacks at the Cape in Florida. Because there are fewer environmental and safety concerns with ocean platforms than with Boca Chica Starbase, the FAA's permission will be easier to obtain. Additionally, the eventual relocation of Starship operations to Florida was a foregone conclusion from the start. Texas' location is too much in trouble. There is literally no time to deal with politics because time is valuable. Likewise, Texas will be extremely sorry because residents will lose a ton of advantages and suffer significant economic consequences. Elon's plans to establish the space city in Texas will ultimately be scrapped, which will be very costly for both Texas and the individuals who relocated there to work for SpaceX and Space City. Using spaceports on the water is the only option, but that will take a lot of time and isn't feasible immediately. The best piece of advice is, if you own any property at Boca Chica, Texas, now is the right time to sell it and let the sale be made as soon as possible if you want to make a big profit. Because that land is about to plunge dramatically and return to levels similar to what they had before the arrival of SpaceX. More so, SpaceX should stop further developments there because it is a futile endeavor. They must move everything to Florida as soon as possible and leave the area. Boca Chica will revert to its previous state in less than 5 years, which will only appeal to a small percentage of people. The majority will still be very disappointed. SpaceX may leave nothing behind when most of the Starship's development is completed. Do you support SpaceX to ultimately relocate the entire factory in Boca Chica, Texas to Florida, or remain in Starbase at Texas, but sue the FAA for the delay and battle them with the necessary footprint? You can also take a look into SpaceX Starship orbital flight decision that has finally been made by the FAA. Just click on this video.